Good evening, good morning, good day, or good night, wherever and whenever you're listening. Welcome to today's Bitcoin and Bitaxe Open Source Miners United Town Hall. Today we're writing the Town Hall number 25. It is purely amazing being still here and doing town halls and talking to you guys and giving you like a quick wrap up of what has happened in the past 2 weeks. And here we go. Fast forward, 25 is the number that we do have today. It's absolutely astonishing. And I love it that so many people are joining in and that we do have so much interest in it. For everybody who's new in here, welcome. Lovely to have you here. Especially if you do have any questions or anything else. Remember, town halls are for the people. There's a reason why this is called town hall. So whenever you tune in, you do have the option to raise your hand. I'll make sure to get you up on stage if you want to ask us any questions or if you just want to chat with us. If you don't want to be recorded on stage, because stages are recorded and then we will upload it on podcast platforms, you can still use the town hall chat. You do have on the top right corner a chat icon that you can use and then you can write in the chat. So all right, I think with that, we can jump in it. It's lovely to have you here on stage, Skot, today. How was Kenya?
Good to be here. Thanks for setting this up, man. Yeah, Kenya was wild. It was wild. I just got back day before yesterday, I guess, and man, it was amazing. It was actually amazing. I wasn't quite sure what to expect going into it, but all my expectations were fully exceeded.
I've seen you in the wild using Starlink internet and mining with a Bitaxe. I mean, the one that you hold in your hand was connected to power. I'm not sure about Wi-Fi, but the other ones that hold up a Bitaxe, they were not connected to the power. So it was kind of funny. But how was that?
Yes, so I got invited to the Africa Bitcoin conference, which was held in Nairobi, Kenya, by Eric Hirschman, who's the CEO of Gridless. Um, and I had met Eric before, solid dude. But on this trip, I got a chance to find out a lot more about Gridless, which I can talk about. But they set up we got there a little bit early, a little bit before the conference, and Gridless set up a group safari. Like we went out into into the African bush and went on a safari. It was amazing. We actually
Oh, wow.
flew out there from Nairobi on a little plane, like a tiny little plane, and like landed in a grass runway and or grass landing strip. Pretty rad. Never been on a plane that small before. And then they picked us up in some like Land Cruisers, and we drove like way out in the middle of nowhere and like stayed in these like fancy tents. And so Eric had told me to bring some bit axes, which I did. And we were driving around basically all day, every day, looking at wild animals, of which there was an absurd number of wild animals, like zebras and lions and elephants and cheetahs and everything, which was super cool. But that picture you're talking about, we Eric brought his Starlink with him, and the Land Cruisers had inverters in it with plugs. So we plugged in the Starlink, got that set up, and it broadcast a Wi-Fi. And yeah, we just, like plugged the Bitaxe into the Land Cruiser's inverter and connected it to the Starlink Wi-Fi, and it just like totally worked, no problem.
That's cool.
Um,
So you were
yeah, so
mining
we were mining.
out in the
We were
wild.
mining up there. What's that?
I said so you were mining out in the wild, in the wilderness of Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so weird.
Yeah, and they're like, we had been like up close and personal with like lions that morning, and then we stopped and like had a breakfast basically out in the middle of nowhere and set it up. It was fantastic, and there was a bunch of cool Bitcoiners out there, and the vibe was really good. So it was super fun.
And how was the conference? I mean, being out there in the wilderness and looking at wild animals and doing a little bit of Bitcoin mining is great, but it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I'm also interested in how was the conference? Is there anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, after the safari, Gridless set up like the day after they set up a site visit. So um, what Gridless does is they mine Bitcoin on essentially these isolated power sources, whether it be hydroelectric, a dam, like a dam that exists on a stream that has a turbine generating electricity. They set up mining there, or they do some solar stuff. But the site we got to visit was one of their biogas generating sites. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but we took yet another, like, even smaller plane out to this, out in the middle of nowhere in Kenya, out to this a is a sisal estate. And
Hmm.
I didn't know what sisal was ahead of time, but sisal is a plant that kind of looks like agave, like
Mm.
sort of a cactusy kind of thing. And it is used to make linen, like the fabric, or like rope. It basically is like a very like stranded plant material. So they grow it out there, and then when it's ready, they harvest the big leaves off of it, and they shred the leaves and turn them into this like long plant fiber that's used for all kinds of things. And this is the largest sisal estate in the world. It's like it goes on forever. And one of the things that happens there is they have a ton of like agricultural waste, like plant matter they're not going to use, like the rest of the plant that's not the leaf. It kind of has like this big stocky thing. So in the past, I guess what they've done is they just burn them like out in the field because this place goes on forever, and the plant lasts for like 12 years, I think, and then it just needs to be like pulled out and new ones planted. So they have like mountains of this plant matter, and they decided that they were going to set up. It's essentially like you a boiler, like a big furnace, thing that you put all this plant matter in and you burn it in there, and it heats up water, boils it, and the steam spins a turbine, which turns an electric generator. And we got to go check this facility out. Like, it was massive, and they have like mountains of this like dried up plant matter and a conveyor belt that feeds it in there, and it's burning, and like all the ash is coming out the other side. And there's like a huge generator that feeds into two shipping containers that they have full of Bitcoin miners. They were What's miners in this case, but it was really cool to see and kind of see how this operation works. And the cool thing about this is that what Gridless is doing is they're using Bitcoin mining to sort of subsidize these power stations like this and pay for them to get installed, so that they can provide power to like these small communities and towns, and in this case, a factory for processing sisal. And so it's like a win-win all around. And they're doing lots of like demand response. So if like the factory or the town needs more power, they can scale down the miners, and then at night they can like scale the miners up, and it generates money, and they pay the generator, the people running the power generation facility back. So it's pretty cool. We talked a lot about how shitty it is to actually ramp up and down a miner's hash rate with stock firmware, because they're not meant to do that. Lots of interest for a third-party firmware that actually lets them do things. Um, these miners are out there in the middle of nowhere. It takes like it's a plane trip or like a long drive to get there, so they don't want to be going out there all the time to make changes or to fix miners. So if they had more control over the miners with a third-party firmware, then I think that'd be fantastic. And so it was, I guess, just another another case in which I think third-party open source firmware could really benefit miners who are doing things that aren't like 24/7 grid connected mining.
Yeah, and also that are not having like huge, massive power plants that they can just hook up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is we hear all the time how good Bitcoin is at buying this stranded power, this intermittent energy, because it's just like this, buyer of last resort for power, and it can really, it makes sense. Like, it can really improve people's situations and finance these things and help decentralize mining like all together. But the unfortunate part is that like these machines just aren't made to do this. And so
Hmm.
anyone who's doing it is really hacking it together. And they're making it work. Like they have APIs and they've kind of like come up with their procedures for how to make it work. But I just don't think that what's out there is doing them any favors, which is a shame because like this is a badass activity and it's good for Bitcoin. It's good for, humanity. Um, I'd really love to see it like flourish. And so that's, a lot of the theme, I guess, going around at the conference, which was later, and these site visits and talking to the Gridvis folks was like, a lot of excitement for open source Bitcoin mining. Of course, they're all very excited about the Bitaxe, but just kind of like what open source mining can do to help people using miners in different use cases. Um, and the theme, another thing that everyone seems to understand is that like grid connected mining with like these pubco miners, it just doesn't seem like it's here for the long run. And so the switch is going to need to happen sooner rather than later, or sooner or later, I guess. Um, and yeah, I mean, there certainly was no opposition there to open source mining. I think it's well received. I think everyone understands it's a cool thing to have. And yeah, so after that site visit, the next day the conference started, which was in Nairobi, and it was huge. I gave like a workshop, which was kind of more of a panel, I guess, on the Bitaxe and open source mining, and it was packed. It was like standing room only in the conference room where the I mean, I guess it was bigger than a conference room. The big room where the talk was, it was like standing room only, like out into the hallway. And like after the talk, probably talked for another like hour and a half with people out in the hallway who were just fired up to do it. There was lots of, people who were like, "Can I buy a BitX from you?" And I'm like, "Well, I brought 5 with me, and they're all gone." Happened like immediately. This also happened last month in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Is basically all the ones I brought were immediately sold because there's no local BitX sellers in these places. There's none in Brazil and there's none in Africa. So I got to talk with a bunch of people who are interested in starting up BitX sales locally. I talked to a couple of people who are interested in doing it in Kenya. Talked to a guy who's interested in doing it in Uganda, and actually there was a couple of people that have some manufacturing capability, and so I was talking with them about getting that started up and get it going. Manufacturing BitXs there. I think that's kind of that's a more advanced thing. So I think they'll start just selling them to begin with. Importing them kind of in bulk and selling them. But that's what we need to do. I think the market is certainly there worldwide for Bitaxes. It's just in a lot of these places, it's really impractical to like import them or just order like 1 or 2 from a seller around the world because of import tariffs and all that.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, one bad example that we did had was, I'm not sure if it was Brazil, but definitely on the South American states, that they do have over 100% taxes on importing electronics.
Yeah, that's what I heard about Brazil is 120% import tax on electronics, which just like really sort of kills the value of the Bitaxe, I guess. I did talk with some guys there who kind of have some workarounds for importing things. I guess Brazil has a some sort of like special economic zone in the northern part of the country where you can import things. And then there's some sort of, like trade agreement with Paraguay, which is, I think, kind of to the southwest of Brazil. So, I mean, I think that's the name of the game is finding people who have this local knowledge. They know how to like import things and, taking advantage of sort of bulk orders to bring lots of Bitaxes into the country, and then you can sell them sort of one by one to all the plebs who are interested, which, I was at a Bitcoin conference, so it's not exactly like the general public, but in both countries, the interest from the people that I talked to was very high, like very, very high in getting Bitaxes. So,
I mean, at least that's good to hear.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty inspiring. I mean, people want to do this. So, it's pretty cool. I went to some other talks from some different groups in Africa. They have something there called B Trust, which is like a very well financed group that is giving out grants to African Bitcoiners working on things. So I heard about a bunch of cool projects they're working on. One of them which is pretty cool, is called Tondo, and it's an app in Kenya and I think a couple other countries in Africa. But what they have over in Africa, a couple countries, is a thing called M-Pesa, and it's basically a digital money that you pay people using like your phone number, right? You can like text M-Pesa to other phone numbers. Everyone kind of has a balance, that's based on your phone number, and you can just send it from one person to another directly. And this is like everything, like some dude selling, selling food from a cart in the street, to like beers at a bar, to like the hotel. Like everybody takes M-Pesa. The downside, I guess, is you have to have an African phone number to use this, and it's run by the main cellular provider, Safaricom, and I think in combination with the government. So it's a totally centralized thing. But this cool thing is Tondo. Tondo is an app that anyone can get, and it will generate a Lightning invoice and pay, and then so you can then pay that Lightning invoice, and it'll send the equivalent amount of Kenyan shillings over M-Pesa. And it worked flawlessly. Like I was able to pay for all sorts of things to people who only accepted M-Pesa using Lightning, like from little trinkets at gift shops to beers, all of it. It worked really well. It was really cool to see. Great for tourists, great for locals, people who want to spend their Bitcoin. And I guess this came out of this B Trust grant thing that they have there. So that was cool to see, cool to use. Got to talk with the team that made it. Good people. Let's see, what else? I got like maybe 2 minutes to speak directly with Jack Dorsey. And of course I asked him, when are we getting these block ASICs? And his answer was very soon, like early 2025. And I was like, really? You mean like next month? And he said, yes. So, I know, that's what I said. I was like, cool. Yeah, I mean, he didn't exactly like hand them over to me, but his, and I talked with him a little bit. I mean, I think he knows, but that the Bitaxe project is very interested in using blocks ASICs to make a home miner. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, that sounds great. We'll definitely get you some chips when they're ready, and we fully support this, and open source is our jam. And I asked him, are you going to release the ASIC open source? And he said, yes, as much as we can. That makes sense.
This refers to the talk that we had a couple town halls ago, where we discussed what they will probably release and what not. So we assume that they will release like the basic functionality as well as the pin layout, but not the actual architecture of the die.
Yeah, I asked, like, are you going to release the architecture of the die? Something like that. And his answer was some of it. And I think that makes sense because, some of the architecture is blocks intellectual property, mm-hmm. and some of it is actually TSMCs, because when you make a chip at a fab, they provide like some stuff, and then the sort of customer provides some other part of the design. So I think that they're going to release as much as they can. The stuff that they actually created, I think that is their own intellectual property they're going to release. So that's cool. I look forward to seeing that. I don't exactly know what that entails, but I look forward to it. They, he reiterated that they intend to release the firmware open source for their miner. I looking forward to that as well. I mean, they certainly haven't done it yet. I have sort of an evaluation version of that firmware that I've used. It looks cool, but it's not open source yet. So I guess that's all coming, and maybe it's coming sooner than I had thought. So pretty excited about that.
I need to say that it's pretty good news. It is the most asked question probably if you do talk about Bitaxe and tell them, hey, this is an open source miner, apart from the ASIC. So this is definitely, I'd say, like breaking news, if it is true that they will actually deliver or start delivering next month. Because
yeah, I know. It was like, I want to believe that that Jack is correct. Maybe that's old news. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't really know. I wasn't gonna question him on it to his face, but that is what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's hope he's right. Let's hope he's right and it comes out soon. It's a big job. Like, making an ASIC is tough business, expensive business. And I think they've said this other places, but they're targeting 3 nanometer chip at TSMC. Like, the other people that do 3 nanometer chips at TSMC are like Apple, Nvidia, Bitmain. So
I'm really interested, like on a technical point of view, I'm really interested in the die size as well as like the package size. Will it be like enormous? How's gonna be the efficiency play out? So many questions that all of us probably have. And I assume, given that you said you only had like 2 minutes, you couldn't actually ask him anything about that.
yeah, we didn't get into that. I'd love to know what the hash rate is of this chip. I'd love to know what the price is going to be for this chip.
Hopefully it will be cheaper than purchasing third-party Bitmain chips.
I don't know. Hopefully it's a lot cheaper than that, but I bet you 3 nanometer dies are very expensive, or 3 nanometer wafers are got to be very expensive. So.
Actually, I guess I got something to add to that. I was, funnily enough, doing a bit of research last night about kind of like the pricing, like the raw pricing of wafers and like chips at TSMC and other fabs. So currently the BM1370, which is in the Gamma everyone's currently using, I estimated that to cost, like if you were to buy it from TSMC direct, about $11. And currently that we're purchasing those chips like in machines for about like 26 to 28. So there's about 100% markup between TSMC and how we're getting them, which I thought was interesting.
That is really interesting. $11. That's kind of like more expensive than I had thought.
Yeah, I just basically took some estimates of like how much a wafer costs on 3 nanometers, which is about $30,000 or so, and you just divide that by like the area of the chip.
Yeah, but then still, I assume, and by the way, hi Ben, it will probably get a little bit more complicated than that, because not all of these dies will have the same like quality. Some of them will perform better, some of them will perform worse, so therefore some of them will go into hydro, others will go into the K model. So we've seen this before. But it's interesting.
That's true. I was going off of just basically how many chips you can get out of a wafer with a little bit of yield.
Yeah,
loss.
let's assume all
It's about-
of them work.
That's about $11.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and then of course like the Supras and Ultras are probably looking at more like $5 or $4 for those. The dies are substantially smaller.
I mean, that's over $2,000 in chips for a S21 Pro.
Yeah, I don't think the markup is like huge, which is why I think Bitmain is kind of like a leader. I think they, run on pretty small margins, especially. I mean, that's just the raw chip. That's not including all of the R&D they have to do, and the actual design, the assembly of the units, like the shipping. It's probably pretty thin after it's all said and done.
That's really cool. Yeah,
With
Avril
that
says
said,
TSMC 3 nanometer yield won't be 100%. So there's going to be
yeah,
some chips that aren't working. Um, they got to pay for all the rest of the materials in the miner. And then they're trying to like amortize the cost of this, like, you know, I think it's like tens of millions of dollars to like get the mask set built and like all the R&D that goes into that. Um,
right. With that said, though, like it's going to be, I think, a better. I mean, obviously, a huge benefit for us to buy chips directly from Block, right? Because we don't have to deal with taking them out and having all that cost overhead of having them put into machines in the first place and shipping and all that kind of stuff. Um, so to me, it seems like it could be not only more profitable for like Block to sell it to us directly, but that's also going to make like bit access cheaper and easier to make. So I think it's just like a
Well,
win-win-win.
I'm confused because talking about 3 nanometers. If I'm not mistaken by the latest news, 3 nanometer production is only available over in Taiwan and not in the US.
yeah,
That's correct.
TSMC is Taiwan, and I think that
I was lately reading the news, and I do recall that I've read that they said that somewhere in the statement was that TSMC they do have production lines outside of Taiwan, but 3 nanometers is tied only to Taiwan, and that they do not allow production of 3 nanometers outside of Taiwan. So, which could drive up the
Yes.
costs as well, and therefore, if Block actually does produce in 3 nanometers, it would be designed in the US, but it would actually be produced in Taiwan.
I think
Yeah, I
that's
mean
my
the whole
understanding
reason
also.
that everyone produces there anyways is the fact that like labor and everything is cheaper in Taiwan.
True.
So it probably evens out. But so TSMC also has a new fab in I think it's Nevada,
Hmm.
and they're going to do 5 and 4 nanometer processes there. So I don't see why not in the future. There may be U.S. made chips.
That'd
Probably.
be pretty cool. I mean, yeah, Avril says producing in the US will be even more expensive, right? You got to pay minimum wage. You can't necessarily just dump all the chemicals in the river out back. There's lots more expenses going along with it. And also, the machines that make these chips are just like they're one of a kind, right? They're made by that I think a Dutch company, and they're just absurdly large and complicated, and seems
Yeah,
like almost kind of
ASML.
custom built.
But mm, yeah, that's definitely something that's really weird. Seeing that like TSMC over in Taiwan, one company from the Netherlands is the only one on the world that or in the world that is actually able to produce the machines that are capable of doing what Taiwan needs. It's really complicated and really interesting to see how the world economics play together.
I
Let's
mean,
quick.
there's some really interesting dynamics that are coming, like with this whole kind of chip war thing. So, because obviously, we were selected by TSMC to make fabs here. So, okay, so they're going to do 3, 4 nanometer here. We have potentially upcoming tariffs, which may or may not make it more expensive to um, import those chips from Taiwan, that is, to make them here. And then, thirdly, that I know of, Intel, I believe, is the only one in possession of an ultra high um, UV machine, which I think is even more or has smaller features than TSMC's at this moment. So that's interesting.
Let's quickly go over a couple of questions in the chat. I've seen that BitMaker asked a couple of minutes ago, but how is the actual block chip doing? As well as TDB3 was asking any rumors about the efficiency. So to both of you, the answer to that is we don't know. We don't have any official numbers. I mean, maybe Skot has some, but he's not allowed to share. I don't know. But so far, we don't have any information about that. Also, BitMaker, you ask, and what about BitDeer? Do you mean like what about them in general?
Well, Bitdeer's been making ASICs.
Yeah.
They released a document a while back, a couple months ago, that said it was their timeline, their sort of roadmap for what they're going to be making, and I believe they're currently on their second rev. It's it's a competitive machine from what I've heard. I don't even know if they're selling them. I think they might just be running them themselves. If I recall correctly, BitDeer was spun off from Bitmain as their mining department, spun off into their own company. They acquired a Desawee miner, which was kind of like hot shit like a year ago, over a year ago. Yeah. As far as I know, that they have their second generation machine. It was advertised as being good efficiency, like sub 20 efficiency. I haven't heard much else about it, but it was cool because their roadmap was like, oh yeah, by Q1 2026 or something like that, we're gonna have a 5 watts, 5 joules per terahash miner, which is that seems
wishful thinking.
Hopeful. Yeah, but we shall see. One of the things that Desawee Miner did when they came out with their machine that was interesting was they were using like 8 nanometers, or a somewhat old process, but they actually had really good efficiency and good hash rate. But I got a chance to take one of those miners apart, and they had 1,000 chips inside. So they were just packing it full of chips and underclocking it. And so that's kind of one way to get better efficiency, is to underclock it and then put more chips in there so that you have a competitive hash rate for each machine. You would think that would just make it really expensive, but I guess, as the price comes down for these chips, you can afford to put more in there.
Also, BitMaker asked now the question that it was more of the question if these chips are proprietary. And to shortly answer that, yeah, basically every ASIC chip out there that is been used for SHA-256D is proprietary so far.
Yep. I tweeted at BitDeer the other day and I was like, hey, want to sell me some chips? I didn't get a response.
So we do have a question from CyberRobot, and I think we can answer this really quickly, is what about FPGAs? Have they not progressed at all? I'm sure there's a sweet spot where a cost to performance ratio makes sense to use them. So FPGAs is basically like they're pre-built to an ASIC. These days, if you're talking, and this town hall here usually is about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, nothing less than that. If you talk about Bitcoin mining, using an FPGA and trying to find a sweet spot, that's not gonna happen. Because for the reason being, FPGAs are in a sweet spot of being like field programmable gate arrays. Like they can do plenty of things, but they're not really good at any of them. And an ASIC chip can only do one thing and is the best, like the winner in this topic or in this task that it's trying to achieve. So FPGAs will not see a rise up in the Bitcoin hash algorithm unless we do change it in the future due to the reason of quantum issues. But that's far in the future, if even at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think FPGAs
so that machine
always...
I posted in the chat. Oh,
go ahead.
That machine I posted in the chat, so that's Intel's new machine, and I believe they're the only one in the world that has it. And that is good for 1.8 and 1.4 nanometers.
Whoa.
Wow. Is that what they call it, like 18 and 19A? They have like a different name for it, right?
Yeah, so the currently it's yes, that's right. So it'd be 18A, 1.8, and 14A nodes. Although, yeah, like each fab kind of has its own standard for like how big these features are, and they can't necessarily like be very comparable as I'm like aware.
Yeah,
Like
see,
one fab's 3 nanometer might actually not be the same size as another fab's. Yeah.
I mean, seeing
Yeah,
these
these are marketing terms.
seeing these lithography, I'm not sure if I do pronounce this correct here, machines is quite insane. I've watched a couple of videos from YouTubers, like big YouTubers like Linus Tech Tips and a couple other ones who have been visiting fabs that do produce chips. It's just insane what you need to be able to point your laser and using all these ultraviolet thingies to produce arrays. It's insane and mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, inside these machines, they basically have like molten metal machine guns that are pointed at each other that like have the bullets perfectly hit in the middle. Like it's pretty crazy, and it does that like thousands of times a second.
It's like tin, like dust or something like that, that they like shine the
Yeah,
laser
it's
through.
molten tin, and they hit it with like a laser twice actually, twice for each droplet, and it's like it happens extremely quickly.
Yeah, but before we move ahead, for everybody who's listening to this later on, because this is a recorded podcast, or I call it like that, it's a town hall, feel free to find us on discord.gg/osmu. There you can join into our Discord, which is our primary source of communicating all about the Open Source Miners United community. And if you do want to get more information, feel free to visit over to bitaxe.org as well as opensourceminers.org. And by the way, for everybody who's currently listening to this and is in here in the audience, it's lovely to have you in here. And I just wanted to point out that CryptoEyes is all the time here while we're doing this town hall, sending out some Bitcoin data and stuff like the white paper over ham radio or over satellite. So that's pretty cool and pretty rad. Just wanted to point that out here so that you guys, if you're interested in that, want to follow this as well. Also, we do have a question from HS Nathan. Hi everyone, just a newbie question. I have a Bitaxe Gamma with an Octo fan and a Nano 3 miner running. Any recommendations or ideas on cooling solutions for a small home mining setup would be helpful. Cheers. So, do we have any recommendations on that? I'd like to give this question away from me.
Well, I mean the stock setup works pretty good, I hope, with your Bitaxe Gamma. Depending on how warm it is in your room, how much that Nano 3 is heating up your room, I guess. You should be able to do pretty well with the stock Gamma setup in your Noctua fan. There's been, if you check out the 3D printing channel on OSMU Discord, there's been some really cool things. People have front fans and rear fans. Duncan's got some new heat sinks that he's made. So yeah, and there's some talk of immersion. I think CryptoEyes is doing immersion. There's Ronin Miner is doing. He's got a water cooled, like a hydro setup. He sent me one of those, and I've been playing with it. It's amazing. It works really well. I mean, you can overclock it pretty significantly. So yeah, this is a big rabbit hole, and you can dig way into it with your Bitaxe Gamma and kind of go as far as you want. And then, there's a lot of people posting around here about different overclocking and cooling options for the Gamma. As far as your Nano 3 goes, I don't know. I guess I haven't really been paying attention to what people are doing with those.
Ducking it.
Doing what?
Just bury it underground.
Yeah, just throw it out, man. What a piece of junk. No, it's not open source, so I don't know. Maybe there's some people hacking on it. Probably not.
Well,
so much,
by the way, speaking
here
about
and
like heating and especially like cooling solutions, Duncan, this is like a thing for you. I'd love to see your Bitchin, because that's the name of your heatsink that you created, which does have like 30% more of material and therefore creating like, if I'm not mistaken, 70% more of a overlay, or what's it named, like the surface area. There we go. I'd love to see some actual numbers, like doing some lab tests and stuff like this. We need to get these numbers out there. The Bitchin Sink, yeah, that's a beautiful name.
That's awesome. It looks cool too. Looks cool, is cool.
Hey, thank you.
Am I on stage?
Yeah,
Hello,
you're
everybody.
on stage.
Hello, everybody. So I shan't keep you. But the long and short of it, so this is open to everybody on this chat. If anybody wants one of these, send me a DM. I will send you one free of charge on the provision that you guys do some testing and publish some data. And I want honest data. I mean, if they're shit, throw it back at me. But I know they're not, so we're good. I don't have the time to, do all the, the analysis and stuff and publish it because I'm, working on the next stuff. But essentially, I'm happy to send one to anybody that wants one on the basis that they just publish some data. Just send me a DM and we'll sort it out. I'll cover all the postage and shit as well. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, dude, I want one.
Okay, next.
Go for it. Send us.
But no, on a serious note, just like it's open to everyone here. Just DM me. But please share some data, and we'll compile it.
It looks awesome.
That's the thing. Like, I'm really thinking about it. We do have, and maybe some of you in the audience do not know that, but we have a wiki page which is called osmu.wiki. It's a web page where you can find most of the data that we do have, and we release it. We also have like a section for lab, so where we do actually some sort of papers and stuff like this. Me, for example, I wrote my master's thesis about the Bitaxe and a couple other things as well, and therefore, there's a need that we spread information about all these things that we're doing here. We're not only doing the great invention, what Skot has dug out here with creating an open source miner, but we're also trying to share all this information with as many as possible. Therefore, it's really helpful if you actually do share this data. Maybe if you do send out a couple of your bitchin things, would be nice. I'll probably make an extra channel for that for the period of a couple of weeks probably, so that we can allocate all the data and then put it onto the lab section of the OSMU wiki, which would be helpful, I'd say, especially with these stock heat sinks that most of the people do have on their Bitaxe devices. I mean, these are just some, I'm not sure, is this aluminium or what is this? Is this bronze?
Yeah, so you touched on the kind of text on it a minute ago. So yeah, it has about 72% more material, which is obviously, imperative for kind of pulling heat away, and it has 32 or just over 32% more surface area, and that's been achieved with the serrations and the fins. So with that alone, there's so much more material to kind of pull heat away. So the way I made these, I hand CNC'd one of them without the serrations, kind of got the concept right, and I actually I had a die made, and these are extruded alley. And then they run through a CNC machine to then, give you the little kind of cut-out bits on the outside. Those holes are tapped with M3 holes. Ironically, I was chatting with Skot earlier about the kind of hole spacing, and we've designed it in a way that, unfortunately, when the early Bitaxes were made, the hole pattern on the Bitaxe isn't perfectly symmetrical. So I had to get a measurement that worked kind of as an average, and I've gone with M3 as opposed to M3.5 or M4 to allow that kind of slight movement. But actually, they fit really, really well, and they work really well. And more importantly, they look great in my opinion. But just as a little plug to myself, I've got boots on the ground in China. A lot of you or some of you know that I co-own the company that made these aluminium sinks in China. We bailed them out in over COVID, and part of the deal was, well, we own half the company. My point being is that I've got a guy over there who sources stuff, and I found a black fan that's almost as good as an Noctua. I say almost as good. It's a couple of dB louder, but it's about 90% quieter than the a stock fan, and very soon, in the next week or so, I'll have 500 of these heat sinks mated with 500 of those fans. So we'll have an all black setup. And for
a
me,
black
this whole
PCB,
thing,
black PCB.
sorry, the black fan. So
No, we
rather than
need a
that
black
kind of-
PCB, a black heatsink, and a black fan. All of it
well,
black.
that's why it's called the Black Edition.
Oh yes.
You know, my push at the moment is the Black Edition. It's all black with the halo and that sort of stuff. But for me, you know, I'm really kind of into aesthetics. And actually, what I've got now, my little 3D printed kickstand that I was pushing for ages, I've stopped making those now. I'm so fed up with 3D printing that actually I've got an 8mm wide billet aluminium CNC stand that weighs about 300 grams. So what's that? £1/4 pound for a pair. And the whole thing is really heavy now. It's just over half a kilo. But there's so much metal on there that pulls the heat away that it's just a really beautiful thing. And it's really small, and it's not. Yeah, basically, I don't have to run these 3D printers all the time, which was getting really boring. So, but yeah, for me, it's all about the aesthetics and the black and the alley and the metal and whatever. And yeah, I've got another really nice version coming, but I won't say anything about that. But you know, all I'll say, it's those of you who got the Star Wars fans, if you remember one of the latest films where you got Rey and Kylo Ren in the forest, kind of black and white, kind of fighting, beating the crap out of each other. It's kind of based around that, but there is another version coming that kind of is an homage to the Resistance. But anyway, I shan't say any more. And actually, Weeps, the Black Series is here. Jump on the Solo Mining Co. my site, and I'm already selling the Black Edition with the alley stands and the bitch and sink, and it's all black and all very sexy in my opinion. But yeah, as I said, I will reiterate, if anybody wants one of these and they're happy to share data, just DM me and I'll send you one.
All right, I'll make sure to put
That
in.
sounds fantastic, man. This sounds like a lot of excellent development. Love to see it.
Yeah, it's like I just love making shit. Like and Scott, last time we met, and actually Wonklu and Crypto Ice as well. We had a jaunt. It was early this year, wasn't it? We all met, and everyone was saying, "Oh, just leave your job, leave your job." Well, I told my business partners to go fuck themselves on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's work in progress, but basically I'm done. Like a lot of you know that I work in the event industry. I've got an event company in London. It's really successful. I've done it for 20 years, and I'm just bored. And actually, I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about design, making, and actually developing this, and that's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, just I need a little bit more time, but I think you'll be seeing more of me. So that's all.
Cheers, dude. This is the dream. Congratulations.
Basically, one too many. I need to stop swearing, cursing. There's probably kids on here, but one too many bloody Christmas light installs in London. I'm like, what am I doing? I hate this. I'm done.
Hell yes.
It's fantastic to finding your own passion. It's absolutely amazing, and having you in here is also really, really amazing. And for the reason being that, I'll make sure to put up probably next week a new channel in the section of members project for the Bitch and Sync. This will be probably a temporary channel just to dial in all the data so that we can feed this into the OSMU wiki, so that it does have like more of a long-term point instead of being just a channel here on Discord and then people still need to use Discord. We want to share as much of all the details that we do have to as many people as possible, and having a website, what better way of sharing data can be?
You should send one or a couple actually to our very own. He's got a long name. Bagger Chantal. I don't know.
Baggerfahrer Chantal.
The guy who's done all the heatsink tests. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, Baggerfahrer Chantal.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Send him a couple. He knows how to do very very detailed tests on the temperature. He's done a lot before.
Well, he did some insane research on that. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, one clue. I want to just kind of convey my kind of appreciation actually for your support with that. Kind of compiling data. As I said, I can do it, but I'm interested in kind of shiny and new and metal and doing stuff, not the not the data stuff. But yeah, if you can host the a bit of a site or a wiki page for that data, then we can get some stuff rolling. That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
And actually, to one thing I want to say as well to all the kind of other resellers that are on here, as far as I'm concerned, you guys can have these at cost. The price is what it is on my site, because obviously, it's the ball ache that comes with packaging them up and walking to the post office and all that sort of stuff. That's what justifies that cost. But actually, if we can roll these out, if they're good enough for everyone, everyone likes them, we can roll them out across kind of stock, then I'm more than happy to discuss that. So I'll leave that with you guys.
I don't want to be the bad guy here, but we need to move on to a couple of heavy topics, because we are shortly in front of a new release. So most of you guys actually don't know, we currently are sitting at the version 2.4.1, and I'm currently speaking about the firmware version for Bitaxe devices. And just to put everybody on the same page here, if we talk usually about firmware stuff, we're talking about Bitaxes. We're talking about single ASIC Bitaxes. So that's the correct term of it. We do have the Bitaxe Hex, for example, which does utilize 6 chips. Therefore, we do have a separate repository, but it kind of got lost, I need to say, and it's a little bit my fault as well, because I don't really have the time to port over all the stuff from the main repository, and hopefully this will change in the future and will be way better. But apart from that, we do have a couple of beta tests that are going on in the background. And a cool new feature that I really want to point out here is to move over to a new library called LVGL to utilize the display in a different form. This is all like background stuff that will go into the next release. People are sometimes confused when they do see there's a new release and nothing has changed. The UI still looks the same. I can still do the same. No, trust us. There's plenty of things going on. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure to head over to github.com/skot/esp-miner and then click on releases. And then you can see like all the change logs. So there are informations about what has changed, and then there's like a quick link to the change and the actual implementation of the change. So if you are into software stuff and if you want to contribute, feel free to do so. We use GitHub as our primary source of distributing the firmware. In the future, we are intending to set up other platforms as well, because funny enough, GitHub does perform, or does you use it to provide open source software and what else, but GitHub itself is proprietary. So therefore, in the future, we are also seeking into other possibilities of sharing the code instead of only being on GitHub. But nevertheless, so I said that in the next release will be LVGL, and to give a little bit of perspective of what this will be, for one, which is going to be obvious, it will enable animations, for example, on the screen, which is pretty cool, and now we can do some random shit on the display. But also it is just way better than what we had before. Like previously we had hard-coded into the firmware on how to utilize the screen, how to set all the strings on there, so how to display data on your screen. But with LVGL, it's more like a module that you can use, and you tell it to do a couple of things, and then it does magically other things in the background. And the best part about it is that we can also port over other screens. So in theory, we could bring up new Bitaxe hardware series or new versions of the Bitaxe in general with an SPI display, for example, which then does have like a bigger screen or can show pictures of your cat, whatever you do prefer. But that's really a feature that I really love to see, and it was implemented by Mutatum. It was, I believe, 6 weeks of work, and it is just amazing that we now do have it in there, and then that it is in the first and in the second beta release for the version 2.4.2. We will need to put up a couple more beta releases before we can move out with the version 2.4.2. But guys, I'm going to tell you, there are so many other changes. It's insane. And the progress lately on the overall firmware is really, really great. I'm loving seeing that. Like my whiteboard that is to my left right now, it was a week ago, it was packed with pull requests that we need to do like code reviews on and check all the stuff. And now I only do have a couple left. I know on GitHub itself we still do have 30 pull requests open. A couple of them will not go in there. A couple other ones need to be reworked. But overall, the current state of developing in an open source manner on Bitcoin mining is just amazing. And I need to say, I love this movement and I love being a part of it. And I love everybody who is joining in here and just like, hey, I'm a software dev. I'd like to contribute. Please, yeah, come in here and help. This is so awesome. All right, let's.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, sorry.
I just want to second that too. I mean, it is so awesome, like to see all the new people coming in, all the hard work. I mean, putting together LVGL, that pull request, like just seeing all the work that Mutracham did to build that, it's fantastic. I mean, that was a big pull. I mean, we've seen tons of excellent stuff from E. Anderson, Mr. V, ton of work by you, Want Clue. I mean, managing all this stuff, getting all these things merged, testing them out, that's a huge job. And yeah, I mean, I feel like just in the last few months, ESP Miner has just gotten significantly better. We had a big speed up, efficiency improvement, speed up from E. Anderson.
Yeah, let's point this out really quickly. Give you guys a couple of numbers. So on the version 2.4.1 that most of you guys are currently on, if you do try to pull up the web page, usually it will take up to 300 milliseconds to load all the information, and then a couple other 100 milliseconds again to load up and feed all the data in. Now with the next release, it will be a snap. It will be super instantly. E. Anderson managed to get it down to less than 100 milliseconds on most of the modules to be just more snappy, more instant, I'd say, which is so awesome. Like, he's doing a ton of work on this end, especially on networking and putting all the things together, managing how everything works. And he's such a great resource of having in this community here, and just going out there and asking him, hey, can you please do a code review on that? Because he has so much experience on this stuff. I'm mind blown. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's happening. Shout out to TDB3 also, putting in some good work on this firmware, for the architecture stuff.
And documentation as well. He was adding in initial documentation and unit test guides. So for people of you who are now thinking like, what the heck are these weirdos on the internet talking about? So if you do write code, you do have two options. Either you're a pro and have a big dig and you trust yourself and you think your code is going to work, or you don't trust yourself and you write unit tests. So these are the two options that you do have. Unit tests are usually good for going out there with like a reliable proof of, yeah, my code is working and it does the stuff that it is supposed to do. And therefore, if you do go into companies and you want to ship new products to production or new software code to production, you usually do have some sort of tests that you do want to run on this software part before you ship it. The current state of using debugging and trying to build new stuff for the Bitaxe is a little bit weird, because the ESP itself does have Espressif on the back, like being the manufacturer of the chips itself and being also the manufacturer of the Espressif library that we can utilize on these chips so that all this magic can happen is quite insane. They also do have a departure of testing, but we never really got into that. And having unit tests and writing tests for specific things on the code does improve our reliability of what we do with the firmware in the future, which is just amazing. Because to be honest, unit tests, I hate them. I don't like to write them, and I hate them just looking at them. But I know that they're useful, and we do have a couple of people that are actually into that and that actually write good unit tests. And having a starting point here, which TDB3 implemented with the PR549, of writing just the documentation on how to use them, it's just good. It's a good starting point, and the future looks bright. Yeah, E. Anderson is writing in the chat, 90% of all the code I have ever written are unit tests. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry for you, buddy.
Yes, it's like the 80-20 thing. I mean, we're pushing towards that just sort of automated test suite too, where we can just push out firmware to a bunch of different version Bitaxes and have them run through a set number of tests. I mean, that would be so cool, especially as we get more and more and more Bitaxe hardware versions out there.
Yeah, and also discontinuing older ones. It's also not easy. Like for those of you who are following on GitHub, there is now for a couple of months this issue open of discontinuing the development on the Macs, because on the original Bitaxe, the Bitaxe Max, for the reason being that it is utilizing the S17 chip on the first hand, and on the second hand, it does use the code in a different way than all the other chips. Specifically on the version rolling part, like the old S17 chips, they can't do that. So therefore, communicating with the chip is way more complex, let's say, because not really on the software part, but more on how the chip actually, the ESP, communicates with the AC chip, and therefore, it is working. It is working in a great way. It has all these new and amazing features with the most recent releases that we have released so far. But it's also necessary to say goodbye at some point to things that you don't really want to have any longer in your code, because it is holding you back on other things. Like, for example, for now, we still need to enable PSRAM, which is a specific component on the ESP to boost up the possibility of allocating memory on our devices, which will also improve other things. But with all the code that we do have, we are currently running into a shortage of memory. We are only sitting at like 50k bytes left that we do have. It's not bad, so there's plenty that we still can utilize, but we need to be cautious. And by discontinuing older products with plenty of code that we no longer really need, because it is like old, and of the Macs, there were only a couple hundreds, if even over 1,000 units been manufactured and sold, it's not really worthwhile to keeping them in there. So we could eliminate old stuff because we have a version that is working, and we can build better stuff for the new chips and ship great, good stuff. So that's the reason, and just a quick explanation of why this topic of discontinuing the Macs was even or is even out there. Alrighty, do you want to add something to that? Otherwise, I'd quickly go over a couple of these other changes, and then it's time to say goodbye to our today's town hall.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So we have LVGL. We also have the documentation by TDB3, as well as like the insane boost by E. Anderson for the response of the web page, which will be awesome. We also have a couple other stability improvements for the next release coming up. Also a new quick link for another pool has been implemented, as well as a couple of fixes on the Swarm section, because lately Swarm was just blowing up and rising out of nowhere. It was this rising star, and now it's back again, and it's working better than ever before, which is so good. We do have a couple of improvements on Swarm as well, being on the hash rate check, as well as the uptime and other data that's been pulled from other devices by MRV777. So that's really looking great. Also, another probably minor thing, but it's a good thing that he's doing that, is E. Anderson is always making sure that we do have the latest NPM packages so that we never run into any security issues. It might not be that useful to plenty of you, but it's good to have that, and looking into that as well. As well as we do have a couple of other things, and there are other things coming in again. So these versions that I'm currently talking about, and what I'm pointing out here is that is the current state. We still do have a couple other pull requests that need to go in before we want to release the version 2.4.2. But yeah, the next thing that I quickly wanted to point out here was a rejection reason on the API, which also comes into another PR. So there was this thing that your API of your Bitaxe device could reject a couple of things, and let's quickly open that up here. So there was an error when you do try to read or send rejection rates to the API, and Mutachrum figured this out and made a PR about this to improve this. And why I'm pointing that out here is there's a funny thing. If you do try to patch, which is a function for the API, your Bitaxe storage to set, I'm not mistaken, was it the password or something else? Let me quickly find that. So one value, if you set this to null, it will actually crash your Bitaxe device. And this is also on the API side, so this will go into the next release as well, so that it is a little bit more stable. And a couple other things. Just take a look on all the pull requests that we do have on GitHub. It's massive. Some of the older ones will probably get closed sooner or later. We do tend to keep plenty of them that we will not implement open anyway, just to remind ourselves that there is the possibility of still looking into that topic. For example, like serial synchronization, which is from October 23, it's still a thing to look into that. Like, it's not bad. This will not be implemented because it does have plenty of issues. It cannot be merged because there are plenty of conflicts. But the idea behind this PR is necessary, and therefore we need to still keep it out there so we don't forget about it. And speaking about the overall GitHub repository, which is currently resided at Skot's personal GitHub account, this will also hopefully, maybe within the next 3 releases, move over to the Bitaxe org. So we'll see. But everything will hopefully be not centralized, but on a unified organization on GitHub.
Yeah, the holdup there was that we have the Bitaxe firmware is checking like a hard-coded address, which is my GitHub personal repo for updates. So we need to like phase in that change.
Yeah, but that's just one string that we need to change. And by the way, a good thing that I checked as well is if we move over your repository, a couple of you people might now wonder, like, what will happen to all the stuff on this repository? No worries, we tested this with a couple repositories. Everything will be ported over. Like, it will be just take Bikini Bottom and move it somewhere else. It will still be Bikini Bottom. It's still the same. All the issues will still be open. All the pull requests will be open. And the good thing is, even if we wouldn't change the update check for the releases, it would still work because GitHub itself does set up a forward proxy so that the old URL does port over to the new one, which is just amazing. So even if you would fail on that, it would still work.
So would we just need to set up the CI stuff then?
This will also be ported over. Like, everything from this repository will be ported over, from code to issues to pull requests, CI stuff, projects, wiki, security, everything. The only thing that will change is, instead of going to github.com/scot/esp-miner, will be you need to go to github.com/bitaxeorg/esp-miner. But if you put in the Skot instead of Bitaxe org in your URL, you will be forwarded to the Bitaxe org one, because it is the same, just on a different location.
Oh, let's do it, man. I'm all for it.
Yeah, but not now. Slow down.
Well, we also get better, more fine-grained control over like access permissions. I think with personal accounts, it's like basically people are either an administrator or nothing. Yes. I think with the organizations, there's like several different layers, so we can like get contributors get them in without having the risk of them just deleting everything, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that's great upon that. Also, I wanted to point one last thing out here before we close up today's town hall session, is we do had lately a couple of questions about things such as opensourceminers.org does have no longer a SSH, so SSL certificate, and a couple other things are not working great. Don't worry about that. Being OSMU doesn't mean, or being OSMU means that we are a decentralized unit here. So all of us, either some of us know other people, some of us don't know other people. We are not an organization, we are not a foundation or anything else, or a company. We're just these weirdos on the internet that utilize a Discord server and GitHub to provide code and freedom of mining to the people. And we also do have a couple of things such as admins here on this Discord server. For example, Skot, Ben, Survapes and me, meaning therefore we are mostly the main people in charge of most of the things. For example, the donation wallet. And there were also a couple of questions about where's all this money gone and what's happening in the background. So we do have the section funded projects, and I was slacking on that. I haven't put in my Bitaxe web flasher. I told that in previous town halls that I got funded from OSMU for doing this rework on the Bitaxe web flasher, and therefore it is in there. Also, you do have the general purpose and information section on funded projects to get a little bit of insight of what will be shared here. We do have a couple other projects that will also go into this one by one after the other. So if you do worry about where will the donation go, there are mainly 3 reasons what will happen with the money that you do donate to OSMU. First off is it will flow directly into R&D, meaning like with that money will be purchased chips, for example, if any new ones are coming out. The second one is it will be used to fund projects such as member projects or, for example, reworking the Bitaxe web flasher. And the third one is running stuff in the background. For example, opensourceminers.org, it's a web page, it needs a domain, it needs to be paid, so therefore money is flowing into that. Or the osmu.wiki, it's also a domain, it needs to be paid for. And that's where the money is currently flowing in.
And also, I mean, like everyone else who's holding Bitcoin, we're doing pretty good right now. So our buying power in the future is going up by just kind of hodling that, which I think is what we're doing with the majority of the funds right now.
Yeah, lately not that much has moved.
Seems like a good time to hold it and let that grow.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That treasury, soon we'll be as big as Sailor.
Yes.
Yes.
By the way, for the people that are wondering now, like, what kind of wallet structure do you use? It's a multi-sig wallet. Like, we don't trust each other. Why should we? We are weirdos on the internet.
Yeah, and I mean, some people have asked me, so we should probably talk about it. But we also have, you can get a membership, or I think it's a subscription to the Discord. That's run by Survapes a lot, and it's run through Discord. And so the dollars for the people who do that go to. I think Discord takes a big chunk of it, but it goes after that.
30 or 40% is what Discord takes.
Yeah, so. Whatever you're into is cool, but if you want sort of to get the max amount of your donation to go to OSMU directly, you should think about donating in Bitcoin to the OSMU wallet address, which is listed in the donations channel. So don't be sending it to anyone else. Look at the wallet address in the donations channel, and go there. We don't have an OSMU Lightning node, do we? Someone was asking me about this the other day.
I'm setting one up. Yesterday, was it? Yeah, it was yesterday. I had with the co-founder of GetLB, I had a long conversation about a couple of things. I'm trying to set up a OSMU Lightning node. It's going to be difficult because I wasn't really sure if this should be hosted in the cloud or if this should be run on premise. And I do tend personally, having my own home lab and doing all the stuff there, I do tend into the section of doing this on premise instead of in the cloud. But let's see. Good things are coming up, so maybe there's some sort of LB hub and get LB and OSMU friendship. Who knows? Maybe. I don't know. I still have to talk a couple more times with him.
Solo Satoshi asks, is there a place for resellers to donate dollars? No, there isn't. We don't have a bank account.
We don't take these full fees. Fiat money.
I know. I guess it would be nice. It would be a shame to turn down any sort of donation from someone who had it, but the sort of decentralized nature of OSMU and the fact that it's not a company means we don't have a bank account, and it would mean someone would kind of have to personally take that on, and then accountants and all that. So it really would be best if you could buy Bitcoin with your dollars and then send it.
Imagine telling your accountant that you're donating money to someone who's not an organization, not a foundation, nothing, like just some sort of an internet address. I'd love to see that face.
Is the way.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we close down this session?
Weird Robot works for Voltage. I could put you in contact with the people there too. Oh yeah, Voltage is like sort of that self-hosted Lightning node, right? Or not self-hosted, like cloud-hosted Lightning node.
You still do hold your own master keys, so it is in the cloud, but you do hold your own keys.
It'd be interesting to see. Do they have like a, we're not like officially a nonprofit, but like a nonprofit organization rate or something we could do. That'd be cool to figure out if we could do that. It'd be great to take Lightning. It's just, I think currently that means someone has a node running in their house, or someone pays for it in the cloud, which neither one of those we've got quite set up yet.
All right, with that, I thank everybody for tuning in here. I thank everybody in the audience. Also, I really appreciate all the questions that you guys had and all the conversations that we had in the Town Hall channel. Thanks for being here. For everybody who stayed into this podcast and was listening to this later on, somewhere on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen to this, thanks for being here. And don't forget to check out discord.gg/osmu. Much love to all of you. Thanks for being here, and let's see you on the Discord. Bye-bye.
See you later.